Welcome everybody. How are we doing? Joe, that was a crazy kind of picture there. It looked like you were real, but part of me knew that you were that was your picture. I was slightly confused for a while. Um, cool. All right. Well, thank you for coming. We'll have a few more people joining as time goes on. Not everybody is as punctual as you, my favorite people. People who turn up on time are always my favorite people. So this is being recorded, and we'll make it available to you afterwards. Probably won't make it available to everybody. Just reward the people who actually take some time out of their day to come along to these things. I'm going to briefly give a bit of an introduction, share a few things about what's coming up for you that might be of interest. But our session here today is about standing out in a crowded job market. Some of you might be more relevant to you than some others. But I'll get back to that in a minute. Before I do, we've got a couple of sessions coming up in June. We've got a session on OKRs from Cancel Surgens, who's quickly establishing herself as something of a bit of an expert on that. She's got a different take on how to organize your OKRs rather than just cascading them down in a hierarchical fashion. But this nice metaphor of a solar system. So join us then on 13th of June to see and hear from Cancel. We've got Daniel Sousa coming again in June on the 26th to talk to us about a little bit of cognitive science of agility and what he calls the 4 Ps of knowledge. I've seen Daniel talk already, and it's really interesting. So join us for that. Both of those you can sign up for at meetup.com, our meetup group. We've got some Agile Mastery Institute pathways coming up, both in person and online. So Robin Haxall's running one in Leeds in July. I'm running both a Scrum Mastery pathway and a Product Mastery pathway in Bristol in the UK in September. Jamie Kriegel is running an online version of the Scrum Mastery pathway in the US time zone, and Deidre is running an online version in the UK Europe time zone. If you want more information on those, you can check out agilemasteryinstitute.com. And linking to what Stephen is very kindly here to talk to you about today, I'm launching something new based on a lot of feedback that I've had from people both within organizations and who are freelancing. And this is the fundamental theme of what we're here about, really, is people in helping professions. So Scrum Masters, Agile coaches, servant leaders, people like that tend to be very bad at understanding, internalizing, and then communicating the value that they offer, which I think is one of the reasons why there's a bit of a problem for people in those types of roles right now. We've lost our ability to help people understand the value that we add. So this is a new workshop aimed at helping people in those roles understand and clarify what their value proposition is, own the impact that they are part of, learn how to communicate your worth, and enhance the influence that you have, as well as building your personal resilience, because these roles, and especially times like this, quite challenging to keep your energy, your motivation, and your resilience going. So there's a 1-day workshop online that I'm running for that. If you're interested, go along to inspectingadapt.com. That's all the promotional stuff out of the way, so I can breathe a huge sigh of relief and get back onto what's really important. Didn't get a very high resolution of this one on the old PowerPoint, but yeah, Stephen Sykes is here today to talk to us about standing out in a crowded job market. Stephen, with Johannes Geske and a couple of people in the States who some of you might know, Jeff Bubbles and Chad Bayer, created and founded a company called Scrummatch. And in my persona as someone who's interested in mastery, who's interested in distinguishing between good and great, our paths crossed. I often get a lot of people emailing me or messaging me on LinkedIn saying, if you're aware of any roles, let me know. And unfortunately, I don't have a great list of companies that are looking for roles, but I did come across what these guys were doing, trying to connect, well versed, capable, distinguished Scrum Masters with organizations that get it and are looking for good people. and I really like what they were doing. So I've got Stephen along today to talk to us a little bit about that. He's going to tell us what they're doing at Scrummatch. He's going to tell us what he's seeing at Scrummatch in terms of the market, the industry, the trends, and also going to give you some tips for how you can increase your chances of landing a Scrum Master role at an organization that gets it. So it's going to be about 15 minutes of Stephen giving us a bit of information, and then he's very kindly and bravely, I would say, uh, open the floor to whatever questions you want to ask him about the market, the industry, finding roles, and making yourself attractive to those types of companies. So that's the introductions. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, or just wait until the end, and we will line you all up. So I'll stop sharing, and then Stephen can share his screen, and you can hear from the person that you really came to see.
So, thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you for the invitation. Really, really happy to be talking to you all. So let's get straight to it. Uh, Standing out in a crowded job market. I think that hits the nail in the head. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of what the market looks like and what Scrum Masters can do to stand out, a little bit about me. I'm Stephen. I'm one of the co-founders of Scrummatch. Scrummatch is a online platform that matches Scrum Masters with potential job vacancies. The difference between any other recruiting firm and us is that actually we're all Scrum Masters ourselves. And we know the industry, and we know what we're talking about when it comes to Scrum and Agile. Um, and our main kind of goal is to make sure that we find real Scrum Masters, because there are a lot of people in the market right now who call themselves Scrum Masters that really aren't. But I'll go into that in a little bit later. Apart from being a co-founder of Scrummatch, I'm also a co-owner of our own agile consultancy, Amazing Outcomes. We're a group of Scrum Masters, product owners, and developers. And apart from that, I'm also a dungeon master. Lots of mastery flying about these days. So a big pen and paper fan. And when I'm not Scrum mastering or dungeon mastering, I have a wonderful wife and a wonderful German short-haired pointer called Jemima. So that's a little bit about me. And then on to what Jeff kindly asked me to talk to you about, which is a little bit about how Scrum Masters can stand out. But before we go there, I think it's useful to talk about what's the actual market situation at the moment and a little bit about how we got here. So, where is the market today? What we've seen is we have a double-sided problem. Oh, I see this stuff in the chat. If anybody has questions, please just let me know, because I'm not viewing the chat at the same time.
I'll keep monitoring that, Stephen. Don't worry.
Thanks, Jeff. So yeah, we have a double-sided problem. On the one hand, companies are hiring less Scrum Masters. I don't think that is anecdotal anymore on the number of employers that we're speaking to, and from what we've been hearing from the entire industry, people are hiring less Scrum Masters. We have big examples of this. I think it all started off with Capital One getting rid of the entire agile departments. I think Barclays got rid of a huge swathe of their Scrum Masters. In Germany, Bayer got rid of a large amount of their Scrum Masters. A lot of people who used to have the title Scrum Masters are now Scrum Masters plus extra work. We're seeing a lot of new job titles called engineering managers, agile project managers, etc., etc. But the pure Scrum Master, those kind of roles are dying out. Or that's too harsh. We're seeing a decline in the number of those roles in the market today. Being a little bit more specific, the amount of freelance work generally on the market is a lot less compared to a lot of internal positions. So if you're a freelancer, you're probably seeing a lot of these roles drying up. And if you are looking for internal roles, there's probably more of an opportunity there. But comes to the other side of the double-handed problem that the market is also saturated with Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. Over the last 10 years, we have seen a lot of people coming in to the market um, with varying degrees of success. Knock-on effects mean that this is having an impact on prices. So what we can also see is that salaries are being pushed down, especially on the freelance side. On the freelance side, daily rates are being squeezed at the moment as companies have a lot more opportunity to be picky and choosy in regards to what kind of freelancers they hire. Um, yeah, so that's basically where the market is today from our view. Um, we are so a Scrummatch is based in Germany, but we cater to Europe, Asia, and the US. Also the UK, the UK, of course. But the UK and Europe's basically in the same situation that I described. I suppose just a add-on to that is that obviously there are different salary expectations in different markets. And if you are able to work remotely or able to travel, the on the European side of the market, salaries tend to be generally higher, and as also freelance rates tend to be higher. So we can come back to that later if that's interesting for anybody. But that's where the market is today from what we're seeing.
It might be a good time to answer this question, actually, Stephen. There was a question in the chat about when you mentioned market, is it European, worldwide, UK, German? Maybe there is an interest in the split there.
So in regards to hiring less customers and the market being saturated, that's all markets. Unfortunately, but when it comes to salaries and freelance rates, what we're seeing is that mainland Europe, so the main countries, Germany, France, Scandinavia, tend to have more higher paying rates when it comes to freelancers and internal Scrum Masters. The most well-paid Scrum Master and Agile coaching jobs still remain in America, the United States, at the moment, and that hasn't changed in the last 10 years, to the best of my knowledge. Probably also maybe a little bit of information on regard to the whole kind of remote hybrid situation at the moment. During COVID, most of the jobs were 100% remote. A lot of those companies carried on remote, but honestly, from what we've seen with companies who are coming to us looking for Scrum Masters, a lot of the jobs are hybrid jobs, and a lot of those 100% remote jobs have completely died out. Again, anecdotal evidence on the companies that have come to us, but I think that's probably indicative of where a lot of the trend is going. So a lot of those pure 100% remote jobs are a lot harder to find these days. Did that answer the question? Hopefully.
I think I think it has. Yeah. Let's see if we get a response to that later on. He says thank
Okay.
you. So yes.
Okay. Then let me move on. So that's where the market is today. How did we get here? Um, the truth of the matter is anyone can call themselves a Scrum Master. Um, this is an ongoing debate in the kind of the industry about what we could have done differently. But the truth of the matter is that there are a lot of great 2-day courses out there. Most people have gone through one of the Agile certification institutes to get a Scrum Master certificate. But basically, anybody who goes through one of these courses tends to call themselves a professional Scrum Master. And the truth is, apart from kind of years of experience, hiring managers can't really tell the difference between a good Scrum Master and a bad one. There are a lot of employers who don't really know what a Scrum Master does. And the truth of the matter is there's also a lot of Scrum Masters or people who call themselves out there who also don't know what true Scrum Mastery looks like, because the truth of the matter is in a lot of organizations, we didn't fulfill the promise of delivering business value. And fundamentally, that's why we do Scrum. That's why we do any kind of agile um, work. It's a means to an end, right? And a lot of the time when we speak to Scrum Masters, sometimes that can be forgotten. We'll go into that. I'll go into that a little bit about now, but I think it's important to say is a lot of the problems in the market right now are a result of us, agile coaches, scrum masters, the industry itself, um, not doing a better job of policing ourselves and making sure that we're doing what we say we're doing. And a part of that is transparency, and that ties into what Jeff, his, your new course, we'll talk about, but we can go into that in a little bit later. So that's how we got there. That's how we got here, right? So we have double-sided problem. We have managers who don't know what Scrum is, don't know what a Scrum Master does. We have Scrum Masters. A lot of people can't differentiate the good ones between the bad ones, and that's a problem. And that's also the reason why we created Scrummatch. We wanted to make sure that we could show the difference between a good Scrum Master and those who don't practice good Scrum. Okay, so the next part that I'm going to talk about is just my observations after doing 229 Scrummatch reviews over the last 6 months. We're a startup. We started in October of last year. And most of my days have been spent after doing my normal consulting job, spending time with Scrum Masters going through reviews. And in these reviews, we, unlike a normal job interview, we test Scrum Masters on what they know about Scrum, but more importantly, what they have been able to deliver in regards to value in their jobs. So a little bit of observations from myself. Apart from Scrummatch, I have to say is I'm also a co-owner in Amazing Outcomes. Like I said, I also hire Scrum Masters myself, so I've been through lots of other interviews directly, and my clients also ask me to sit in Scrum Master interviews to make sure they're hiring the right people themselves. So lots of experience here. But directly onto it. So, what kind of things are employers saying? Speaking to employers, their criticisms of most of their CVs and applications they get is generally that most people talk a lot about what their day-to-day activities are and not really about what they accomplished. This is like the number one gripe that employers are saying to me, that they might get a 4 or 5 page CV, and a lot of it is stuff that is frankly to do with what you do in your job anyway. Employers do not need to know that you facilitate a sprint planning session. Employers do not need to know that you lead or facilitate retrospectives. That's a given. If you're applying for a Scrum Master job, they don't need to know about the day-to-day stuff. What they really want to know is they want to know about what you achieved and what was the real business value that you created. And you could probably speed up your application process a lot and spend less time writing CVs if you focus on those particular areas. If there's questions about what business value is, we can talk about that a little bit later. But really, if there's a one takeaway, I would say out of me talking for 15 minutes, it is focus your CVs and your interviews on talking about value and step away from talking about your day-to-day activities, because employers don't care. They want to know about the value that you created. Moving on. When it comes to Scrummatch, 40% of the people who we review um, don't get onto our platform. And one of the major reasons that they don't get onto the platform is because they cannot explain the purpose of Scrum, and they can't explain how it should be implemented, both concisely and precisely. And I suppose the takeaway here is, and it might seem very, very simple, is that if you can't tell us how Scrum works in 5 minutes, why should you trust employers to trust you to implement it? And I know it sounds like very basic stuff, but what we're looking for is, can you explain to me why we're doing Scrum, and can you explain to me how Scrum works? And what we find is a lot of people that try to come through our review process even fail at this. So back to basics, try practicing why we're doing Scrum and what Scrum should look like. Okay, next. So I said before, Scrum is a means to an end, business value, but most Scrum Masters spend more time talking on about the how than the actual value delivered. A lot of things we get when we go through our review process in Scrummatch is a lot of people talk about psychological safety, all very important, fun retrospectives, pair programming, TDD, test-driven development, one-on-one discussions with their team members. And fundamentally, that is all good stuff, but that's really the how part of your job. But most managers, especially senior managers, and we're talking about C-level, they don't care about the how. They trust that people can do the hows themselves. And what they really want to know about is the result and the value. And what we found during a lot of these reviews is a lot of Scrum Masters don't really speak the language of management. When you're talking about values and value outcomes, what they want to hear is, well, tell me about the revenue I'm going to generate. Tell me about the time it's going to take to get to money. Tell me about return on investment. Those are the kind of things that managers would like to hear about. Something that I can recommend very much is something called evidence-based management. It's a framework, I think, from Scrum.org, but it's separate to Scrum. In fact, you could use evidence-based management in any kind of organization, if it's agile or not agile. But it's a good governance framework, I think, when it talks about what kind of value our business is generating. And actually, it's a good kind of governance framework to see what kind of value that you as a Scrum Master can help and support your teams with. So those are kind of my top tips, as it were. The last slide is just a slide showing the data that we've kind of collected from Scrummatch. Just so you know, we have a maturity matrix, and at the bottom you can see what those kind of maturities are called. So we have people on the far left that we that cannot use Scrum and we don't allow on the platform, to people who can actually optimize the entire organization. People who are Scrum Masters and Agile coaches who have led companies through entire organizational transformations and the like. And what you're seeing here is a breakdown of statistics of all the people who've come onto Scrummatch and what kind of and where we've placed them on this kind of Scrum Master maturity index or matrix. So instead of me kind of talking more about what this data tells us, I'd like to throw it to the floor. And without knowing a lot about what our maturity level matrix looks like, what kind of first impressions do you see as a group that would kind of that shout out to you?
A lot of people don't know what they're talking about.
100%. Um, so on our current figures, it's 38%. So nearly 40% of the people we reject off the platform because they call themselves Scrum Masters, but they don't know Scrum. And this doesn't mean that they're bad people or they don't have any strengths in other areas. It's just they don't know about Scrum. And what does that mean for an employer? It means for an employer that it's almost a coin flip between whether they have a Scrum Master that knows what they're talking about or a Scrum Master who has no idea what they're talking about. And unfortunately, employers often don't know the difference. And that's led to a lot of the problems that we have today. Because if you hire a Scrum Master who has no idea about Scrum, what kind of outcomes are those organizations going to get? And what kind of impact is that going to have when those organizations fail at their business goals? And what kind of views are they going to have on Scrum Masters and Agile coaches as a whole? So that's one take. Yes.
I'm a bit confused. So I would have expected the numbers to be going down from left to right. But what I'm seeing there is that there are more people who can improve Scrum and improve the product than can apply Scrum foundations, and more people that can apply Scrum foundations than have Scrum knowledge.
So this is so what we're finding is that even people who have higher levels of Scrum maturity are finding it difficult to find jobs on the market right now. And a lot more of them are trying to use alternative ways of finding jobs, like coming to us. On the other hand, what we're finding, and again, this is anecdotally talking to these people in our reviews, the people who have lower levels of Scrum mastery are really struggling to find jobs, and they're considering leaving the market. Again, anecdotal evidence on our part, but my assumption is that a lot of people who came in who have lower levels of Scrum maturity are finding it more difficult than others to find jobs and are probably leaving the market, and we're left with more mature Scrum Masters who are trying to find jobs. But again, that's only my opinion based on a small amount of data.
So I'm probably misinterpreting the data, which is highly likely. But let's say I've got 100 people who apply,
Yes,
and 90 of those people know what Scrum is, which isn't what the data is saying there, but let's just say 90% of people know what Scrum
sure.
is. Of those 90 people, not all of them can possibly prove that they've got Scrum foundations. Yet this is saying there are a higher proportion of people that can apply Scrum foundations than actually have Scrum knowledge.
Hold on.
Hmm.
So this is saying that a very small percentage of people have high, or I mean, it's expected, right? There's a larger percentage of people who have Scrum foundations compared to the small amount of people who can optimize the organization. I can't. I'm as good at reading data as you, Jeff. I can't extrapolate what these figures mean. I can only say that there are more people coming onto the platform with higher levels of Scrum maturity. There are still people who are coming on that only have Scrum foundations. But when it comes to those people eventually getting jobs, it's not the people who are in those lower areas, shall we say.
Yeah, so it's I think it's a positive sign that more people with experience are seeking out this platform where they can potentially be matched with companies that are looking for people that get it. There's a few questions that have been asked in the chat that I'll throw to you if now's a good time.
Yes, absolutely. But I just want to point out one thing that you said about experience.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is only our um, evidence or our observations based on the reviews that we have done. But actually, we haven't seen a general correlation between years of experience and ability to deliver business value. In fact, a lot of the people that we have not let on the platform are people who claim to have got 10, 15, 20 years in the business. So, um, of course, experience counts and helps you in regards to your knowledge and understanding of Scrum. But just because you've been in the industry for 20 years doesn't mean that you've been generating positive business value.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that you have a solid understanding of Scrum. And that's why we have people who've maybe been in the industry for a lot less, who have a lot higher level of Scrum maturity and understanding compared to others. But happy to answer the questions that are in the chat.
Cool. All right, I'll play curator here, and I'll try and put them in an order that makes some kind of sense to me. So not necessarily in the chronological order that they came into the chat window. So Saruchi asks, do you run specific assessments to judge people's Scrum knowledge, and what's the criteria for that?
Sure. In regards to kind of assessments, we have a two-stage process. The first one is when you sign up for Scrummatch, you have to answer a Scrum-based question, effectively, which is not about your kind of theoretical knowledge. It's about your the value that you've achieved in a specific example. So we get a lot regarding that one question. And once you have passed that first level of filtering, you go through a review with two of the Scrummatch reviewers. And during that review process, we ask you lots of questions. I won't go into the detail on the kind of questions, but they're both theoretical, practical, and case study based. I will say, just as a kind of a heads up, when it comes to the first layer of filtering in regards to Scrummatch, most people don't answer the question specifically. We're very clear in what kind of answers that we're looking for, but most people give us different answers to what we're looking for. So it's a good hint, as in try to answer the question we're looking for and not just tell us about your Scrum knowledge. But yes, we have a two-stage process. We have a question-based filtering, and we have a review process with two reviewers.
Okay.
In regards to the passing criteria, just reading it, it's not yes, no, it's not a binary. We do have people that we think we don't let on the platform, and then after that we use our maturity matrix to decide where you are on that scale. If you come to the review, you'll see after the review process, we present the maturity matrix, and you can read it there.
This is a more recent one, but it seems to be in the same theme. And Maru says, what's the minimum threshold in terms of experience for you to allow people onto the platform?
So we don't have a minimal experience threshold. We even have a column here for people who have no practical experience, but they have Scrum knowledge and can explain Scrum. We'll even allow those people who want to have their first their first job in Scrum on the platform. So the point is, we're not here to penalize anybody, right? We're here to help people grow and learn. And part of this review process isn't just you're onto the platform, that's it. We give very detailed feedback on how people have done in their review process. We're very, very proud of the fact that regardless if you're on the platform or off the platform, we have had lots of people giving us feedback saying it's probably the first time they've received feedback to that degree in regards to the answers they've given. Yeah.
Okay. There's two different questions that I think are quite related in a way. So Mary says there's some Scrum Masters who are working in companies that essentially don't give them a huge amount of opportunity to measure delivered value. They're really struggling with what he calls agile theatre. So are you filtering companies in a similar way, or is there a Scrummatch equivalent for employers?
Yes. So let me go on. We're not there yet. So in regards to kind of filtering employers, we try to make sure that we give candidates an understanding of where companies are on their agile journey or their Scrum journey. Of course, not all companies are perfect, and to be honest, if they were perfect, there wouldn't be a job for us, right? So there are different levels of Scrum maturities in organizations. But the good news is that means that also for people with less of a mature understanding of Scrum, there are opportunities there. So, for example, an organization that has never done Scrum before might not need a expert who has gone through an organization that wants to start with one Scrum team and try to use Scrum for the very first time might not need the experience of a Scrum Master or an Agile coach who has been taking companies through Agile transformations. So there are different companies that are looking for the different levels of Scrum Master maturity. I've had companies tell me specifically, Stephen, the Scrum Master we're looking for is only for one team. It's not on a scaled framework. We don't need to have a highly Scrum Master guru or Agile coach who's highly involved in organizational change and development, because that's not where we're at the moment. But in regards to Agile theater, if I can be provocative, is yeah, there's a lot of Agile theater going about, but then it's our job to kind of change that theater into reality. And I think a lot of the times we as Scrum Masters don't rock the boat enough to kind of push for change. And if you're not seeing change, then we could probably do better as Scrum Masters in kind of implementing it. A lot of the times, and I'm only speaking for myself, by the way, it's better to uh, ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. And there's a lot of things you can do as a Scrum Master to change the organization and change your teams. And you will see the value, and companies will see the value straight away. And I think there is to some extent, we as an industry need to be a lot more bullish in regards to what our accountability is. And but that's maybe a different discussion. I don't know how far deep down this rabbit hole you want to go, but I do think there's a lot of occasions where we need to push for change further um, than what's actually happening in organizations at the moment.
I've, on the one hand, I've got a lot of time for that, and I've pushed Scrum Masters that way myself over the years. I think the market as it is right now, it's a lot harder to be that provocative in the fear of losing a job, and when there aren't that many alternatives out there, the the power is more in the theatre master's hands, shall we say? But yeah, and but even in that environment, right, you could provide some stories of how you have made some changes in trying circumstances, how you have met the organization where it is and not just settled for it. So I think that links a little bit onto Amy's question, which is if you're showing accomplishments in your CV, how would you advise a Scrum Master who's pretty low on that maturity level, but that's largely because they haven't had a huge amount of opportunity to be with a team long enough to get those results?
Um, Fair question, but then I'd throw it back as well. Tell me about what you've done and what were the result of those actions, right? So
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally, 90% of the Scrum teams that I have seen fail to deliver the core of Scrum, which is delivering working software within a sprint, right? Done software, usable software within a sprint is the core of what we do as Scrum Masters. And from my observations, 90% of Scrum teams fail to do that. So the first question I would ask is, is your Scrum team working on creating, or has your Scrum team, or can your Scrum team create done usable increments? If the answer is no, then there is no other problem that you should be focusing on than creating done increments, because that is the basis of closing our empirical feedback loop and generating value from Scrum. And that's where you should probably put all your energies, is to making sure that your team is creating done increments within a sprint. Is there stuff outside of creating done increments that you can show that create business value? Absolutely. But there's nothing more important than being able to create valuable increments before we can talk about if those and validate if those increments are actually useful at all.
And so that then links on. So I'm going to use it as an opportunity to link in, right? So as you're talking about done working increments, Joe's asked a question about that being an achievement for a Scrum Master to get a team using sprint goals, delivering a working increment. How would you then expect that Scrum Master to position that in the language of management in terms of value, in terms of impact within that organization?
So yeah, the release part is where the rubber meets the road. Is absolutely right, Daffet, just reading your thing. So done increments are a promise of value. Done increments are not value in itself. We only close the empirical feedback loop by putting a done increment in the hands of our users, and that's the only time if we can say it's valuable or not. So getting to done and releasing done increments is the first part of the process, but it's only the first part of the process. If you're not putting working software in the hands of your users and getting feedback from those users so you can inspect and adapt, then you have not generated business value. Scrum is based on business value, and the point that business value is created is the point where you put working software in the hands of your users so you can learn something about it. Whether you're learning that the increment that you created was a pile of trash and they have no need for it, or whether you think the users think it's the best thing since sliced bread, or whether your users think I would use this if something else changed. That is the point where value is created, when it's in the hands of the users. So, but you can't get there unless your team creates done increments, right? So if you have one problem to solve is, first of all, create working software within a sprint. And then once you have working in software in the sprint, you can start validating whether your increments have value or not.
And we need to position that. So I'll just, if I may, put my 2 pence on that one. Joe's Dance's question with value is often expected to be money or time. I think that they're very common and good in many ways definitions of value. They don't have to be that. But finding out what it is that what game we're playing as an organization. Is it to do with market acquisition? Is it to do with customer experience? Is it to do with time saved? Is it to do with cost saved? Is it to do with profit? Whatever strategic game we're playing as an organization, we should be able to tie what we're doing at a team level towards helping us achieve that as an organization. Part of our role is helping us see the part that we play in that bigger picture, connecting what we do with who we're doing it for and why we're doing it. And that will involve, in different situations, coaching product owners, coaching leadership, coaching the teams, visualizing outcomes, all sorts of different things, but thinking at a bigger level rather than just the mechanics. It's really important.
And just exactly what you said, Jeff, but maybe just a follow-on observation. Most Scrum Masters that we speak to tend to stay within the team. And that's not 100% of our role, right? We are agents of organizational change. We're change agents. And if your only focus is within the team, how are you going to affect the wider organization? And what we see is, in lower maturity Scrum Masters, they feel a lot comfortable staying within the team and team problems and not reaching out. And that's where you get some difference between higher maturity and lower maturity. And you talk about things, okay, well, what's happening on our value stream? What's happening downstream of our activities in producing done increments that is delaying our product getting into the hands of the user? How can we speed up those downstream activities? Maybe you have a separate QA department, and it would be cool to integrate your QA tester into your software team, so you have a more cross-functional team. What's happening to marketing? What's happening if you work in a regulated environment, somewhere like medicine, banking, or insurance? It's not as easy to get your working increment or into the hands of the users. So what tools do you have in your toolbox as a Scrum Master to speed up that process? Sorry, I don't know if I went on a bit of a tangent, but go
No,
ahead,
I
Jeff.
think that's good. I think that's good. Trying to work out where to go next. So I think it's a really difficult one for you to answer, but I think it's probably something that you've spoken a lot about internally, and if not, then you probably will be. How about the filtering of resumes, whether it be human filtering or perhaps increasing AI filtering? You mentioned about CVs. You shouldn't be talking about the hows and things like retrospectives and planning sessions, but if the AI is filtering for those things, or the humans are filtering for those things based on the job description, isn't that going to stop you getting through that first round?
Um, so we probably have a bias here at Scrummatch. The people who look to us to hire for them are asking us to filter for good quality Scrum Masters because they have failed in the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which means that candidates that we are matching with those people don't use AI filtering systems. They're going on the basis of our recommendations and their human analysis. So, to an extent, we have been shielded from the devil that is AI filtering, because companies are coming to us because they don't trust AI filtering and they don't trust their own processes, and they want us to do the filtering for them.
Okay, so that probably sits quite nicely with Martin's question then, which is around what's your take on the soft skills that Scrum Masters bring that are harder to equate to sort of hard bottom line value like empathy and listening and servant leadership? Presumably, then, if you're filtering that and the companies that are coming to you know you're filtering for those types of great Scrum Mastery, that's not so much of a problem.
So all of those soft skills are a means to an end as well, right? So you can have, if you have great soft skills, but you don't deliver business value, should a company hire you? And that's a really tough question, but the answer I think is clear. And the answer is all those things should help you deliver business value. They're absolutely strengths, but there's not a direct correlation between great soft skills and business value. Fundamentally, it's the business value that's important. I think those soft skills are amazingly important and help you deliver business value because that's the how you get about to delivering your business value. But again, this is my opinion. Companies don't really want to hear about your soft skills. They're assuming that you have those skills already. Again, companies don't care about the how. We are in a sector that is, compared to other jobs, paid relatively very well, and we are seen as experts. And as experts, we are seen as having a toolkit of knowledge that can help businesses generate value. The companies that we're talking about don't care about how you get to that value. They care that you have a track record of delivering that value, right? So yeah, soft skills are absolutely important, but those aren't the kind of things in our experience that you should be talking about in an interview. Of course, it's important that you have empathy. Of course, it's important that you have great listening skills. But I want to know is what have you achieved? Tell me about the last product that you've been working on. What went well? What were the successes of that product? Is that product making money at the moment? What did you learn from releasing that product? What was the feedback from your users? So without sounding too harsh, I think we're asking a different set of questions, right? We're really focusing on what our companies are asking us is tell us about delivery. Tell us about the value that you brought. How you got there is important, but it's not as important as the actual value that you were generated.
Okay, so it's up to us to prove that the soft skills that we have are part of the reason why we've achieved that value.
Sure. And let me say it's also a pitfall, Jeff, in that a lot of Scrum Masters go into job interviews talking about soft skills in regards to when they're asked something like, what's the greatest strength, right? These kind of like typical job interview questions. And really what you'd like to be saying is my greatest strength is I get stuff done. I deliver working software to users who give me feedback, which has led to X amount of increase in our users, which has led to 95% satisfaction scores, which has led to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think
Mm.
again, personal opinion based on what and also based on our observations and from what our employers are saying to us, your focus in interviews should be focused on the value that you've brought and the value that you've brought to the organization who's hiring you.
Okay. I'm gonna, again, try and link two questions together here. So Richie picked up on your point quite early on in your presentation around people now are being expected to do more than one role, um, such as is Scrum Master and Product Owner or Scrum Master and Project Manager. Is that being seen as a uh, better? Are they being seen as better candidate than Scrum Masters as a pure role? And I'm tying that into Lee's point, which is that he believes he's been chasing a dream for 8 years now, starting to question whether actually there really is a need for real Scrum Masters out there and whether that is something worth pursuing.
Um, to part one, are there companies out there who are trying to do two different things at the same time? Yes, but there are still companies out there who are looking for pure pure Scrum Masters. So it's a depends question. I don't have a I don't have a right answer. Of course, focus is always great, just being a Scrum Master, but I've also seen great software developers who've taken on the accountability in the role. I can't give a black and white answer because I've seen examples on both sides. In regards to what was the second question, Jeff? The second part of that question?
Is it worth pursuing this dream of being a real Scrum Master?
Um, yes, it's a hugely rewarding job. Um, But let me be honest, a Scrum Master job is not an entry level job. And that's probably one of the mistakes that we, the industry, made over the last 10, 15 years, is that there was um, a push in the certification market that if you get a Scrum certification, that you have the knowledge and experience that you need to become a good Scrum Master. And that's patently not true. Of course, knowledge is great, training is great. They're all helpful things, but knowledge and training alone doesn't make a great Scrum Master.
Okay, so the fact that it's not an entry level role, I think, is an interesting one. So I'll link that to what would your suggestions for someone be who's taken a career break and is looking for a Scrum Master role?
If this is your if you're looking for a Scrum Master, so if you're looking for your first Scrum Master role and you've taken a career break and you want to get into Scrum, my first advice is start working in a Scrum team. It doesn't necessarily have to be the work of a Scrum Master. You could be a developer in a Scrum team. You could be not necessarily a software developer. You could be working as a business analyst or as a tester or somebody in marketing or somebody in legal. Regardless, work in a team that delivers value. The Scrum Master side you can pick up, but there's nothing better than actually working in a team that delivers value regularly to see how good Scrum Mastery works. Of course, learning is very, very important, but don't stop your learning a 2-day certification course. I think ongoing learning is really important. And I suppose the one thing that I've probably learned that we aren't very good at as an industry is mentorship. That is, find a Scrum Master who has been doing Scrum properly and try to soak up as much wisdom as they have. And the last point is if you don't have experience as a Scrum Master professionally, try doing it personally or have mini projects, help out with charities. Um, but again, show your business value.
Okay. Time for a couple more. There's one. Maybe I didn't quite get this actually, so I'm going to ask this again, just on Suruchi's part, because I think I confused things. Are you seeing good companies expecting Scrum Masters to do a secondary role as well? Or are you still seeing companies looking for your good, focused Scrum Masters?
So both. In regards to the secondary role, a lot of companies are changing the name of what effectively a Scrum Master job is. There are jobs out there that are amalgamations of management roles and a Scrum Master role. So the latest version that's quite popular at the moment is the idea of a engineering manager, somebody who is responsible managerially for the development and leadership of the developers, as well as doing the standard Scrum Master role. Most of the jobs, though, going back to your first point that I have seen, are for pure Scrum Master roles. I haven't seen QA and Scrum Master, developer and Scrum Master, product owner and Scrum Master roles a lot in the marketplace. But there is a lot more of this um, Scrum Master by any other name, but you're going to have more management responsibilities, or you're going to have project management responsibilities on top. I can't hear you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. I had a cough, so I put myself on mute. So don't give up on your dream yet, Lee. Is what we're hearing, and I fully believe that as well. Even if things might not be as or looking as good right now as perhaps they did a few years ago, I fundamentally believe this is going to prove to be something that a lot of organizations didn't realize they needed as much until they didn't have it. Somebody put in the chat a reference to Elisa Adkins' quote of, "I don't know what you do, but keep doing it because it's adding value." And sometimes you don't know what you've got until it's gone. I think a lot of organizations are going to see that. Stephen and I were chatting online before you got here about how we're seeing a little bit of a trend away from cross-functional teams, for example, and back more towards component teams. It's a bit of a panic, a bit of a knee-jerk reaction towards efficiency over effectiveness. It will cause problems, and organizations will go back. It's quite common for these things to change and shift. Cool. It's coming up to 5. There are a couple more questions. If I were to send you these questions, would you be able to perhaps answer them, and then we can add them into the comments on the meetup
Absolutely.
event?
Sure.
Is that a good one?
Absolutely. Go
Brilliant. And
ahead.
of course, people can always reach out to you, right? And get in
Yeah,
touch.
absolutely. So you can follow us on LinkedIn. You can find us on scrummatch.com, or if you have a specific question you'd like to ask me, just send me an email at stephen@scrummatch.com.
Brilliant. I will post a link to the recording. I'll send a message out to all of you that were here where you can find it. Should be early next week. Don't forget we've got those 2 meetup sessions coming up in June. And yeah, keep on keeping on, people. You're doing great things.
Thank you very much for inviting me here, Jeff. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Stephen, for your time and sharing your knowledge.